The Russell Westbrook era in Houston is officially over. It's only a matter of time until James Harden's ends too. Can the Rockets' new front office pull off arguably the NBA's most daunting rebuild? The Rockets gave up 2 nearly unprotected first-round picks and 2 pick swaps to bring Russell Westbrook to Houston. They received 1 heavily protected first-rounder back to unload him a year later. Getting a pick to swap the equally massive salaries of Westbrook and John Wall begins the process of digging out an unfathomably deep hole. It probably won't keep James Harden in Houston for the long term, and it doesn't even do that much to set up the Rockets for their post-Harden future, but it's a small step in the right direction. The basketball considerations in this trade are almost secondary. For all his flaws, Westbrook is much closer to his peak than Wall, who is coming off a torn Achilles and hasn't played an NBA game in 2 years. Westbrook averaged 27.2 games on 47.2% shooting, 7.9 rebounds, and 7 assists per game last season, and played some of the best basketball of his career after the Rockets dealt Clint Capella and reshaped their offensive system to make it more comfortable. Wall will have to adjust his game to play with Harden even more than Westbrook did. Both traded stars are ball-dominant guards who depend on size and athleticism to make up for their streaky jumpers. The difference is that Westbrook is a dominant scorer, while Wall is a more traditional floor general, but Harden is a great passer in his own right and doesn't need someone to set him up. He never showed interest in playing off the ball with either Westbrook or Chris Paul, so it's hard to imagine he will suddenly do it with Wall. Westbrook and Paul average fewer assists playing with Harden than they had in a long time. Wall will have to find a way to succeed in Houston without showcasing his primary skill. The good news is that he's a better shooter than Westbrook. He shot 33.6% from 3 on 4.6 attempts per game in his last 2 healthy seasons with the Wizards. He will be more of a catch-and-shoot threat with Harden, but that will mean accepting the smallest offensive role of his NBA career. Wall can relive his glory days in Washington when running the second unit in Houston. The problem is that it isn't a very big window given that Harden averaged 36.5 minutes per game last season. The Rockets are still a good team. Harden gives them a high offensive floor regardless of who is around him. They have most of their supporting cast back from last season and added Wall and Christian Wood, the most skilled big man of the Harden era, but they still can't challenge the Lakers who embarrassed them in last season's playoffs. Harden's reported trade demand to the Nets isn't going anywhere. The benefit of trading Westbrook to the Wizards as opposed to a team like the Knicks that would have sent back nothing but bad salaries is that the Rockets received a good player to go along with a future draft pick. The Rockets won't sink to the bottom of the league with a veteran-laden roster, so they shouldn't feel desperate to deal Harden immediately. Houston was never going to get much for Westbrook. Their future depends entirely on the seemingly inevitable Harden deal, which likely means waiting for the trade deadline and hoping that some contender will get desperate enough to package a young star in a mountain of draft assets. Reuniting Harden with former GM Daryl Morey in Philadelphia for either Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid still makes the most sense for Houston. No one the Rockets could get back from Brooklyn is that kind of foundational star. Not getting such a player would mean committing to a full-scale rebuilding project without having their first-round pick in 2021 or between 2024 and 2026. Thanks to the first Westbrook deal, that is as bleak a timeline as exists in the NBA. There's a reason why Murray walked away a month before the situation began to unravel completely. The biggest win for Houston's front office, led by new GM Raphael Stone, is that it's been able to somewhat replenish its draft cover since the recent trade demands from its 2 former MVPs. They received 1 future first-rounder for Westbrook and 2 more firsts from Portland for Robert Covington, and could get similar hauls for Tucker and House. Combine those picks with whatever they get for Harden, they would at least have something to build around. While Thunder GM Sam Presti still has Houston's future tucked away in his treasure chest of assets, now the Rockets can at least start to rebuild with someone else's. Stone, who worked under Murray, has no margin for error. He has to nail every draft pick they have and squeeze as many assets as he can out of every trade. It's a daunting task for a first-time GM. He's made good deals so far, but his time with the Rockets will be defined by what he receives for Harden. Now let's take a look at some winners and losers of the Russell Westbrook and John Wall swap. Russell Westbrook trade winner, Washington Wizards guard Bradley Beal. It must be noted that this star 27-year-old guard averaged 30.5 points, 4.2 rebounds, and 6.1 assists on 46% shooting from the field a season ago. He did this without the services of John Wall, who has been sidelined since December of 2018 with an Achilles injury. There have been talk that Beal wanted out of DC. We're not sure where that stands right now. What we do know is that the stud guard now has a healthy star to team up with him in the backcourt. The combination of Beal and Westbrook should be fun to watch. This makes Beal a winner of the Russell Westbrook trade. Russell Westbrook trade loser, Houston Rockets. This one is rather simple. Houston dealt away multiple first-round picks ahead of the 2019 and 20 NBA season to team Westbrook up with fellow former NBA MVP James Harden. To say that it proved to be a failure would be a dramatic understatement. That's going to do it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like on the video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I'll catch you next time. Goodbye.